a discovery that turns a fundamental rule of battery chemistry upside down. For years, every battery manufacturer has been taught the same lesson. Moisture is the enemy. Water must be driven out, baked away, eliminated at all costs. Remove the water, they said, and your battery will last longer, perform better, be more reliable. But researchers at the University of Surrey took a different approach. Instead of removing the water, they left it inside. And the result was nothing short of extraordinary. The team worked with a material called sodium vanadium oxide, a compound that has been studied for years as a potential cathode in sodium-ion batteries. Sodium, unlike lithium, is abundant everywhere. It exists in seawater, salt deposits, minerals, oceans. It is one of the most common elements on Earth. That makes sodium-ion batteries an attractive alternative to the lithium-ion technology that powers our smartphones, electric vehicles, and grid-scale energy storage systems. But sodium-ion batteries have a persistent problem. They simply do not store as much energy as lithium-ion batteries. The materials used in sodium systems charge more slowly, hold less charge overall, and degrade faster over repeated use. Until now, the performance gap between sodium and lithium has been too wide for sodium-ion to be a serious contender in many applications. The Surrey team changed that equation entirely. Their material is a form of sodium vanadium oxide, known as nanostructured sodium vanadate hydrate. The word hydrate means that water molecules are built into the material structure itself. This is not water contamination or moisture intrusion. This is water that is chemically integrated into the crystal lattice, a permanent structural component. Normally, battery researchers heat this material to very high temperatures, driving the water out through a process called calcination. They bake the material until every trace of moisture is gone, believing that only completely dry material can perform well. This is not a hypothesis. It is a convention. It has been done this way for years, by many different research groups around the world. Everyone accepts it as fact. The Surrey team asked a simple question that everyone else had seemingly stopped asking. What if the water is not the problem? What if removing it is exactly what causes the problem? Instead of baking the material to remove the water, they tested it with the water still inside. And the performance improvement was dramatic. The hydrated material stored nearly twice as much charge as typical sodium-ion materials. Nearly double. In battery chemistry, doubling your energy storage capacity is the kind of result that makes laboratories go silent and then erupt in excitement. The material also charged much faster than conventional alternatives, and it maintained its performance reliably for more than 400 charge cycles. A charge cycle represents one complete use of a battery, from full charge to full discharge and back again. 400 cycles means the battery can be charged and discharged 400 times before its performance degrades significantly. That is not just good performance. That is practical, usable performance. In laboratory tests, the water-containing version held almost twice as much charge as the dry version. That level of performance placed it among the strongest cathode materials ever reported for this type of battery. It was no longer a research curiosity. It was a genuine competitor to existing technologies. But the most surprising discovery came next. The team placed the hydrated material in salt water. Not fresh water. Salt water. The kind of water you find in oceans, seas, the most abundant liquid on Earth. Salt water is notoriously difficult for battery components. It triggers unwanted chemical reactions. It interferes with ion movement. It corrodes materials that would survive perfectly well in fresh water. Many battery researchers consider salt water an enemy number one for energy storage systems. Despite those conditions, the sodium vanadate hydrate continued to work effectively. More than that, it began removing salt from the water. The sodium-based material pulled sodium ions out of the seawater, while a graphite electrode removed chloride ions. Sodium and chloride are the two main charged components of common table salt. This process is known as electrochemical desalination, the use of electrical reactions to draw dissolved salt out of water. One technology, two purposes. The same system could store. The breakthrough came from a team led by Professor Mingxin Huang of HKU's Department of Mechanical Engineering. Their work addresses one of the most persistent challenges in the quest for affordable green hydrogen: the need for expensive, corrosion-resistant structural materials that can survive in harsh electrochemical environments. The conventional wisdom in materials science has long held that stainless steel has a hard limit. When chromium in the steel reacts with its environment, it forms a thin protective oxide layer. This passive film prevents further corrosion, but only up to a point. At approximately 1000 millivolts, the chromium oxide itself begins to oxidize further, forming soluble species that dissolve away the protection. This phenomenon, called trans-passive corrosion, has been considered an insurmountable barrier for decades. Water oxidation during electrolysis requires a potential of approximately 1,600 millivolts, well above that limit. This mismatch has forced the green hydrogen industry to rely on titanium components coated with precious metals like gold and platinum. These materials work, but they are extraordinarily expensive. Structural components alone can account for more than half the cost of an electrolysis system. Huang's team found an unexpected way around this limitation. Instead of fighting the chemistry, they embraced it. Through a process they call sequential dual-passivation, they created a material that develops a second protective layer on top of the traditional chromium oxide. This second layer, based on manganese, begins forming at around 720 millivolts, well before the chromium layer begins to break down. The two layers work in tandem. The chromium oxide provides the first line of defense, while the manganese-based layer kicks in as conditions become more extreme. Together, they allow the steel to resist corrosion at potentials reaching 1,700 millivolts, beyond what is required for water oxidation. But here is what stunned the scientific community. Manganese is traditionally regarded as harmful to the corrosion resistance of stainless steel. For more than a century of materials science research, adding manganese to steel has been seen as a trade-off. You gain strength and toughness, but lose corrosion resistance. The discovery that manganese could actually enhance high-potential corrosion resistance is not just new. It is, in the words of the researchers themselves, counterintuitive and cannot be explained by current knowledge in corrosion science. Dr. Kaiping Yu, the first author of the study published in the journal Materials Today, put it this way: initially, we did not believe it because the prevailing view is that Mn impairs the corrosion resistance of stainless steel. Mn-based passivation is a counterintuitive discovery which cannot be explained by current knowledge in corrosion science. However, when numerous atomic-level results were presented, we were convinced. Beyond being surprised, we cannot wait to exploit the mechanism. The research was not an accident. It was the culmination of nearly 6 years of systematic investigation. The team began by discovering the unusual behavior of the steel, and then spent years understanding why it behaved this way at the atomic level. Rather than focusing on how alloys resist corrosion under normal conditions, they developed a new approach to high-potential resistant alloys, materials designed from the ground up to survive at voltages far beyond what conventional engineering considers survivable. The economic implications are staggering. Current estimates suggest that a 10 megawatt PM electrolysis tank system costs approximately 17.8 million Hong Kong dollars. Structural components. The stainless steel framework and parts represent up to 53% of that total. If SSH2 can reliably replace even a portion of these titanium components with steel at roughly 40 times less cost, the economics of green hydrogen production shift dramatically. To put this in perspective, if structural materials cost 40 times less, the levelized cost of green hydrogen produced from seawater could drop significantly. This is not incremental improvement. It is a paradigm shift in materials engineering. The technology has already moved beyond the laboratory stage. Tons of SSH2-based wire have been produced in collaboration with a factory in mainland China, marking the first step toward industrial-scale manufacturing. The path from laboratory discovery to commercial application is rarely smooth. Electrolyzers require components in practical forms, metal meshes, foams, and complex geometries that go beyond what can be demonstrated in a beaker. Scaling the sequential dual-passivation process to industrial production will require engineering expertise that extends beyond materials science into manufacturing and process control. Nevertheless, the HKU team has demonstrated that the fundamental barrier, trans-passive corrosion at high potentials, is not insurmountable. By rethinking the role of manganese in stainless steel, they have established a new paradigm for alloy development applicable not just to green hydrogen, but to any electrochemical process that operates at high potentials. The discovery also carries philosophical implications for how we understand materials science itself. For generations, engineers have been taught that certain material properties are fixed, that corrosion resistance and manganese content move in opposite directions. This research suggests that under the right conditions, those relationships can be inverted. The same element that undermines corrosion resistance under one set of circumstances can enhance it under another. The green hydrogen industry has been waiting for a breakthrough like this. Titanium is not just expensive, it is also a finite resource with its own supply chain vulnerabilities. If stainless steel can do the job at a fraction of the cost, it would remove one of the most significant barriers to scaling up seawater-based hydrogen production. The HKU team's work was published in Materials Today under the title, A Sequential Dual-Passivation Strategy for Designing Stainless Steel Used Above Water Oxidation. Patents covering the technology have been applied for in multiple countries, with 2 already authorized. The transition from experimental material to industrial product is underway, and the question is no longer whether the science works. It is whether industry can scale it fast enough to meet the growing demand for green hydrogen. As green hydrogen moves from laboratory to industry, the role of materials science cannot be overstated. Every step forward in this field brings us closer to a future where clean energy is not just possible, it is affordable.